All righty, y'all. We are about to get started. This is the second town hall. And the first one, well, we'll give people a few minutes to join in if anyone joins. Try to keep these relatively short because I'm thinking that people will see this on the back end versus the front end. Because the first one didn't have any participants, and maybe this one doesn't either. But the first one, we talked about long-term vision, we talked about short-term vision, and we talked about just possibility, just expanding what's possible from a presidential candidate. And now we're going to get into a little bit of the money in politics. And it's a big issue and something that until we solve, until we look at, until we educate ourselves on, is something that's going to continue to cause problems for us with our system. You know, part of the corruption is the amount of money involved in it and the companies and individuals that use that money to influence. Most of the time, if someone gives you something, they're going to want something in return, right? And that goes for politics as well. So if people do come in, we'll deal with that. But let's go ahead and jump into it. We want to be punctual here. So we're going to talk about money and politics, right? And we got an election coming up. I'm trying to get ahead of the game because from a grassroots standpoint, it's going to take a lot of education. And this is part of the education. So as I'm educating myself on politics and what's going on, I'm sharing that knowledge with you guys. And that's part of this journey as well, because I'm not a politician. I'm just someone that sees the faults in the system and just thinks that we can do better. And is approaching that from that standpoint. All right, so money in politics. 3.1 billion, okay? That's the amount that the presidential candidates raised and spent over the 24-month election cycle, last election, right? This is just presidential candidates, not counting Senate and all that stuff. And what I'm looking at is public data. So these are not my figures. These are things you can look up for yourself. And you can look this up at fec.gov, right? So the thing about these political contributions, and we'll get into them, is most of them are public, but there's ways that they can hide these things as well. So when you look at it from a political party standpoint, right, the Democrats raised 1.5 billion and the Republicans raised 1.6 billion just for their individual campaigns, right? So that's a lot of money spent. And when we looked into that, a lot of that spent on advertising and things of that nature, right? And that's just for that election cycle. It's really, most of those ads are slinging dirt at each other and things of that nature, not really constructive. And it doesn't benefit. I think that's a waste of money, just my personal opinion. But that's the amount of money that's spent. And I'm sure this election is going to be going to spend more money than that as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. So these are the kind of things that keep the average person that doesn't have this kind of budget or this kind of backing or have these corporations that are funding these campaigns and lobbying and things of that nature to assist with. So that's why it's such an uphill battle to try to get someone that's outside of this two-headed snake system, if you will, to shed some light on it. But we're doing the best we can what we have, right? This just shows some of the top contributors to both campaigns, right? So you look at some of Trump's top contributors and some of Biden's top contributors. And again, this is all public information. But one of the things that was interesting is the amount of some of these individual donors, right? Las Vegas Sands, 45 million. Addison Center for Drug Abuse Treatment and Research, 45 million. Walt Disney, 10 million. That was surprising. For Trump, Blackstone threw a couple million in there as well. So these are contributors, if I can talk, to Trump and companies and individuals as well. You look at Biden, and this isn't all of them. This is just a list of the top ones. Bloomberg, that was interesting, 93 million contributed to Biden's administration. And also to see Alphabet down there with 5.27 million. But this just shows you the people that are contributing to these funds. And you have to ask yourself, if I'm giving you 93 million, 45 million, what am I getting in return for that? Am I that gung-ho about freedom and democracy and things of that nature? If so, is that money better spent in other ways than buying political ads and things of that nature? So we're going to talk about the big money, right? That was what was that? Let's go back, 3.1 billion there. And when we look here, 13.227 billion. All right, this is PAC money, Political Action Committee, and we'll get into that and not going to get too much into the weeds. But again, this is about educating ourselves. I'm just sharing the knowledge that I get as I learn about these things. We'll talk about the big money. As you see, that's a significant amount more than what the individual campaigns raised, right? And when you actually look at the comparison, it's 4 times more. And it actually looks like a Pac-Man, right? So we're making a play on PAC money and Pac-Man. But the actual graph, pie chart, looks like a Pac-Man with 13.227 billion raised by political action committees and 3.18 billion raised by the actual campaigns themselves. So 4 times more PAC money is involved. And we'll get into the ins and outs of some of the details on the PAC money. And you could just see from an example, these are the different type of political action committees, there's different ones, and we're going to kind of get into the definition of a few of them. But you can see the PACs and the super PACs are the ones that are contributing the most, okay? And we'll kind of get into some of these definitions, right? So a leadership PAC, right? That's a political committee that's directly or indirectly established, financed, or maintained, or controlled by a candidate or an individual holding the federal office. So this is the actual political action committee of the person running for office. And when you look at the contributions there, you can see 260 million compared to 3.4 billion and 7.7 billion for the super and hybrid PAC. So they're contributing, but not on the level as the others. And then you got your regular political action committee, right? Most PACs represent business, labor, or ideological interest, right? So where's the PAC that represents the interest of the American person, the average American person, the blue collar person, the person that really believes in the ideals of America and wants a better life for them and their family, doesn't want to have all this power and wealth and things that we deal with the corruption that's going on. But again, business, labor, and ideological interest for the most part. And one of the things about PACs, they can receive up to $5,000 from one individual, and they can contribute to the PAC or committee per calendar year. They can receive up to $5,000 from any individual, and they can give $5,000 to a candidate committee per election. Now, the interesting thing about a PAC, Political Action Committee, so while they're not allowed to coordinate any independent expenditures with candidates, many are run by people who are personally close to a candidate or formally associated with the campaign. So they can't individually or independent, they can't give money to the campaign, but they're run by people affiliated with the campaign. So it's a buddy system, if you will. Then you got Super PAC, right? They have the ability to raise an unlimited amount of money and accept contributions from companies, nonprofits, unions, and individuals. So you can see the money from the Super PAC is huge. And they're not allowed to coordinate the same thing, expenditures with candidates, but again, many are run by people personally close to the candidate or formally associated with a campaign. So while on paper they're not affiliated, I'm sure they're having those conversations outside of the office, if you will, or outside of the realm of the jurisdiction of the law, behind the scenes, if you will, and helping on another level. They're just playing around with the loopholes and getting around the rules that they make themselves, right? So they know how to circumvent them. Then we have a hybrid PAC, or they call them carry committees. And it's not affiliated with their candidate as well, but they can operate as a traditional PAC, and also they can, operate as a super PAC and have unlimited access to funds. The thing that makes them hybrid is they have to have separate accounts, right? So those are the different kind of PACs. And when you go back up, you can see the super PACs and the hybrid PACs raise a lot of money. And this is one that was interesting, the political nonprofits, right? This is a way that, because if you contribute to a political action committee, it's on the record, but a nonprofit, they're not required to disclose their donors. So that's one way that they can hide who's giving the money. And that's another loophole and way that they get around those. They can't coordinate with political parties or candidates, but they are allowed to raise unlimited sums of money. So this is part of the problem with the current system. All of this money involved and all these people that are asking for influence and favors, I'm sure, for this money. Yeah. And again, we kind of just look at that. You can see the huge difference, right? $16.4 billion between PAC money and campaign money. And again, the PAC money is 4 times as much. So this is part of the problem with all of these hands in the cookie jar, these people, I'm sure, wanting something, wanting a return on their investment, wanting influence for their contributions. And people talk about a corporatocracy, where corporations are ruling, and you can see that that looks to be the case. Look who's funding a lot of these campaigns, these corporate entities and these people that want something in return. And so they fund the campaigns, and then the person that gets in office in turn makes laws or write laws or bends laws or whatever that are favorable to those people that give those contributions, right? So that's the way the game works. And we're looking at it from the outside in, and we can't expect it to change itself from the inside. But again, this is an uphill journey. So I just want to talk about some of the things that that money could be used for, and just other ways that we can potentially look at different ways to govern ourselves and just, just distribute the resources on this planet that we all get for free. And we talk about money and the cost of things, but are we really getting a good return on our investment? That's really what we got to look at. So just look at just a couple of things, right? End of homelessness. So according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it costs $20 billion to end homelessness in the United States. $20 billion, right? We almost spent that on an election. So we can end homelessness for $20 billion. And these are all estimates, right? But just giving you some rough ideas of the other things that we can do with the money that is spent, that it's gone, right? What would be the benefit of investing in those, homelessness, right? I mean, that's additional resources, additional talent, a whole lot of additional things that we can benefit from helping ourselves out, right? Spending that money on ourselves. Americans spend $19 billion on unplugged appliances and $35 billion on gym memberships. And the government spends $718 billion on military. So it's not like we don't have the money to spend. We just spend that money in other ways. And what if we actually invested in ourselves and our people in this country and applied those funds to that and got a return from that? I feel that if you invest in people, you're going to get a better return. The government spends on average over $35,000 a year for every person enduring chronic homelessness. So towards public funded crisis service, jails, hospitalization, emergency departments. So we're spending that money already. So why can't that money? I mean, that's around the same price of the average American income, right? So we're spending that and not getting anything from it. So I'm just saying there's other ways that we can look at it. It's just one example. And again, the money is there. We're spending the money. We don't question spending $718 billion on military. So what if we spent 20 billion less than that? Just spent 700 billion and we ended homelessness in a year in the United States. What kind of story would that be? What would it be? What would it be like to be part of the campaign that did that, right? Yeah, and people will say, well, we need to increase military spending in the military budget, and it's important, protection, this, that, and the other, and I understand that aspect of it, but we also have to look at it from a diplomatic standpoint and also from a cost standpoint. What are we benefiting from the spending of this money? And could we be more efficient? That's what we talked about earlier. Could we be more efficient in this? And this is just using the SLQDC, safety, law, quality, delivery, and costs, right? Just kind of looking at that from that aspect. Ending world hunger. I mean, we're talking about big things here. We're talking about changing the world for the better. And again, these are things that may not be able to happen in the short term, but these are things that would benefit humanity on a whole, right? We talk about, we'll just go back here with the government spending on military. A lot of that spending is due to undiplomatic ways that we interact with each other, right? Because we're creating enemies, we're protecting ourselves from what? Why are we protecting ourselves? Why do we have to spend so much to protect ourselves on a fight or expand or whatever we're doing? Like, we have to really look at these things and see, are they really valuable and should we continue to do them? But ending world hunger, let's take a look at that. And these are estimates, right? We're just showing the possibility. And these are things that we can simulate and really get into the details and see these things. So I'm just putting this out there as the first awake presidential candidate, right? Most presidential candidates aren't talking about big things like this, right? They're talking about superficial things and trying to keep control of this House and this Senate and all of this stuff, still playing partisan politics while the average person is suffering from that. The whole story, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, right? And most of the politicians that we're dealing with are not poor, let's just put it like that. So ending world hunger. They say it will cost $330 billion to end world hunger by 2030, right? And I looked at some figures from people that have studied this, and the range is $11 to $45 billion per year, right? We spend that on military budgets without blinking an eye, right? World military spending is 1.981 trillion, right? So we could have ended world hunger, and that's just 1 year, 2020. Multiple times over for what we spend on military. So it's not like we don't have the money or we don't have the funds. We just don't apply that to humanitarian things. We don't see the value in that. But again, the human resource, the people, is what we should invest in. Those are the ones that are going to change the planet and help the planet. That's what we really need to start looking at. And again, look at our similarities versus our differences. A lot of this military spending is because we amplify our differences instead of celebrating our similarities. And there's nothing wrong with us being different. That's part of why we're all here. We're all not meant to be the same, but the differences are not worth the things that we blow them up about, right? And the US government spent about $766 billion on this military in 2020, right? So the US government could have ended world hunger at least for a year, right? Could have shaved some money off of that. We could have ended world hunger for a year. We could have taken care of the homeless for a year, right? With what we spend on our military budget. So, and we talked about before some of the waste that goes on with the food waste, with the supply chain, things of that nature. So I don't know the details if that's included in that, but there's probably other efficiencies that we can put onto this. So from the money and politics standpoint, the question that we have to ask ourselves is that money well spent? Are we getting a good return on our investment, right? This is just something that is, again, spent on a lot of political ads, a lot of just campaign stuff that is only going to last for a short term. And then that person gets in office, and odds are that person is going to try to repay or do favors for or write favorable policy or laws or whatever for the people that give them those big contributions. And that's not me and you, right? But that money that we're paying into the system, right, and that we're on the hook for from a national debt standpoint, could that money be used to help us out, right? What would that do for, reducing homelessness? What would that do for crime? What would that do for a lot of things, world hunger as well? So we can spend it on guns, but we can't spend it on food. So that's just the reality that we're in. And as an outsider looking in, I'm just showing a different perspective on the things that we could potentially do different, right? And it's going to take outside thought. It's going to take thinking bigger. It's going to take thinking differently for us to get out of the hole that we're in. If we continue to do what we've done, we're going to continue to get what we've gotten. And look where we're at. We're on the brink of a potential world war, right? And the rhetoric is not changing based on who's in office, and it's something that I don't know if they're going to be, again, they're not benefiting themselves by changing the system, right? So the system, I don't feel is broken. I feel it's working exactly how it's supposed to. It's been manipulated and things of that nature. And the people that are benefiting from the system don't have an incentive to change it. So it's going to be an outsider or us as citizens changing this thing from the outside. We have the power. As soon as we realize that, then we take our power back, and we're really in control. We've always been in control, but we've been manipulated and programmed to think that we're not. The only way 1% can control 99% is if 99% don't know their own value. So we're going to put this up on the GoFundMe, and we'll do this again next week. Hopefully we'll have some feedback, but if you've at least got an insight into some of the things that I think about and some of the things that I research, and just giving you an example of some potentials that we can do just within this country and in the world. We can do things so much better and so much differently than we're doing now. But it's going to take some different thought. It's going to take being open to other ideas. And I'm not saying I have all the best ideas, and everything that I'm talking about is the the thing to do or the right thing to do or the way to do it. It's just ideas that we can talk about and brainstorm on and come up with better ideas. You know, that's part of what I wanted this town hall to be, sharing these things and getting feedback. And we'll see what happens with the next one. We'll do it again next week at 7. And these are scheduled from 7 to 8:30. But if it's just me talking, then I'll just do this presentation and stop it and put that online. And if there was Q&A, then we'll get into that then. But this just gives you an idea of the type of candidate that I am. And if people are interested in someone running for that kind of office that thinks like this and wants to do these kind of things in a pragmatic way as well, I'm just not going to do things that don't make sense. I try to use common sense, try to use financial responsibility, right? Try to make things work from just from an engineering standpoint, being an engineer myself. So, all right, y'all. Well, I appreciate people that have checked this out. And again, this will be on the GoFundMe. Any questions, reach out to me and we'll do it again, y'all. All right. Thank you.